I got a call a few weeks ago from a land attorney. I don't know if he was a land attorney. I got a call from an attorney. He worked for a national title company, so it was a big title company. And he had a claim that he was working on that was related to a boundary dispute, and it was in a town that's pretty close to our office. And so he had called me to get some help with that, with resolving that claim. So the homeowner had discovered the overlap and talked to the neighbor, and the two neighbors were in a dispute, and they submitted a claim to the title insurance company. And so the title insurance company was getting involved to see if they could resolve the issue. So basically what had happened was there were two subdivisions next to each other, and one subdivision, the surveyor went to the center of the creek, and on the other subdivision, the surveyor had kind of straight line between the two property corners at the corners of the subdivision. And so there was an overlap, right? So that the area between the creek and the straight line boundary was overlap, and this was not small. It was several acres, and it spanned several lots. I don't know, 7 or 8 lots. It was not a small amount of land. It was a significant amount. And so you could understand why people were upset, right, about this. So the attorney wanted to know, hey, can you get us a proposal to mark the limits of the overlap on the ground? The neighbors want to be able to come out with us and the attorneys, and we want to be able to look at where is this overlap physically on the ground? What features are contained in the overlap? So he said, sure, no problem. We do this kind of work for title companies on a fairly regular basis, 2 or 3 times a year probably. So he said, yep, we know what you need. We'll get you a proposal. So I put together a proposal for the attorney. It included a boundary survey to locate the 2 lots, each lot in each of the subdivisions, and calculate the area of the overlap based on the 2 boundary surveys. Prepare an exhibit, just a simple 11 by 17 exhibit with a UAV aerial background and the boundaries showing the area of the overlap. And then we'd go out and physically set stakes to mark the overlap on the ground so that the neighbors and the attorneys could see where the overlap was. So I sent my proposal. I can't remember the exact dollar amount. It was somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 to get all that work done. And part of that's because these were older subdivisions. It was going to be quite a bit of work to do the boundary survey. And so the attorney for the land title company got back to me and said, hey, this is way more than we wanted to spend. Just give me a price just to stake the overlap. Now, that may sound reasonable at first when you hear that. Like, why was Landon trying to sell this guy all this extra work? Okay, but if you're watching this and you're a surveyor, you know why that's ridiculous, right? Okay, I can't determine where the overlap between the 2 subdivision maps, where that is, until I survey both of the subdivisions, right? I have to survey the 2 parcels, one in each subdivision, to understand where the overlap is. So what this showed is that this attorney had no clue what he was talking about, right? He didn't understand just the very basics about how boundary surveys work. He was totally focused on the bottom line cost and not on really figuring out the problem and getting a good solution for the insured, right? And so I was in shock, right? I shouldn't have been. Like, I should know better after 20 years, but like, it blew my mind that I was dealing with somebody that worked for a major land title company, national land title company, an attorney, and I was having this kind of conversation with him, right? And he even said, hey, I don't need an exhibit. I already have an exhibit. And so he sends me the exhibit. It's like a screenshot of Google Earth with some red crayon on it, right? It wasn't even close to a professional exhibit. I would be embarrassed to show it to a landowner or an attorney, right? So I don't know what was going on with this guy. He was obviously way out. He was either way out of his league or he just didn't care, right? So I explained to the attorney very patiently. I was like, I can't just give you a price to stake the overlap on the ground. Here's why I actually have to do the boundary survey. I said, we don't have to provide you an exhibit if you don't want one, but I strongly recommend it based on our previous experience with these types of claims. And basically the guy never called me back, right? He ghosted me. So he went to try and find somebody that could, I don't know how they were going to do it, but he went to find somebody that was less expensive. So I think there's some important lessons here for anybody involved in commercial real estate, okay? Brokers, investors, developers, attorneys, title insurance people, surveyors, right? So there's at least 3 really powerful lessons, okay? So here's the first one. Attorneys can be ignorant, right? I think sometimes we give attorneys way too much credit. I've learned, now I work with a couple excellent land attorneys, more than a couple. I work with a handful, and they do great work, and they take the time to understand what I'm trying to do as a surveyor. But there's a lot of attorneys out there that, you know, they know how to tie a Windsor knot in a tie and wear a suit, but other than that, they're just not worth very much. So you got to be careful about putting too much faith in your attorney, especially if it's not somebody that you've worked with before. So they can be ignorant about boundary and land title issues. That's even attorneys that work for title companies. So just because you have an attorney, you know, he's got a law degree and he's licensed by the bar and he works for a title company, doesn't mean he understands boundary and land title issues, as was obvious from the story I just gave you. It's a true story, by the way. That was a true story. Okay, the second lesson is you got to manage your title insurance company if you want a quick and effective resolution to your claim. So you got to police that title company, man. They don't want to spend any more money than they have to resolve your claim. And really, the best way to do that is to have you hire your own attorney to deal with the attorney at the title insurance company, right? That attorney is going to represent you and your interest, and that attorney can help you hold the title insurance company accountable to the terms of your policy. Now, that costs a little bit of money, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the end to get a quick and effective resolution to your claim, right? Do not depend on the attorney that's working for the title insurance company. And then the third thing is, hey, just because it's on a subdivision map doesn't mean it's true, surveyors, right? So in this example, I had two surveys, two subdivision maps right next door to each other, and there was a several acre overlap between the two maps, right? And that's because one of those two surveyors, or both, didn't do a proper boundary survey when they subdivided the land, right? They didn't look at the adjoiner deeds. They didn't look at any of the chain of title. And there was an overlap there, right? County surveyor dropped the ball. He filed the two maps. So just because it shows up on a subdivision map doesn't make it fact, right? That's why you need to work with a good boundary surveyor you want to work with a boundary surveyor that really knows their stuff, right? That understands and knows how to critically analyze even a filed subdivision map. Even those can have mistakes.